me, Ethan, regular guy, just trying to do life the right way. Mechanical engineer, stable paycheck, not glamorous, but it keeps the lights on and my brain busy, married to a woman named Claire. For about 3 years, always thought our marriage was pretty solid, normal couple stuff, arguments here and there, but nothing crazy. Felt like we had a good base under everything. At least that's what I believed then. About a year ago, things started getting off. Claire got deep into a certain flavor of internet feminism. Look, I've never had a problem with equality. Fair is fair. But this wasn't that. It was like she installed a brand new software update in her head, and the thing was glitching constantly. Suddenly every conversation felt dangerous. Like I had to watch every single word I'd ask her to grab the mail when she came in. And somehow, that turned into a 25-minute lecture about the invisible labor women supposedly carry. I'd cook dinner, which honestly I did most nights then. If I asked her to do the dishes, she'd accuse me of strategic incompetence, apparently, because I didn't do the entire task cycle myself. These were brand new buzzwords. She swung them around like baseball bats, and most of it seemed to come from her best friend, Lila. Lila was something else, mid-30s, always single, constantly ranting about how every guy sucks, but the dating advice she gave sounded like military strategy, like she was planning an invasion instead of a relationship. Claire would come home from brunch with Lila, practically vibrating full of fresh theories about how unhealthy our marriage was. Our marriage, which I thought was teamwork, was suddenly being described as some oppressive power structure. Apparently it needed to be dismantled. I tried to stay calm about it, seriously told myself. It was probably just a phase. People get obsessed with new ideas all the time. Eventually they chill out. I'd try asking her where all this was coming from. Try to have a normal conversation. She'd immediately accuse me of getting defensive because I was afraid of losing male privilege, which basically shut down any discussion, right? There felt like debating a Twitter thread. Not my wife one night sticks in my memory pretty clearly. Maybe 2 or 3 months before everything finally exploded, I was in the kitchen making shrimp stir, fry one of her favorite meals. She was sprawled on the couch with headphones on, laughing at some podcast Lila had sent her. I was actually trying to make the evening nice, normal couple energy. So I asked how her day at work went. She slid the headphones off slowly, already irritated, said her day was fine, but then launched into this explanation about how it was exhausting, always being expected to perform emotional labor just by telling me about her day. I stood there holding a wooden spoon, completely confused. I wasn't interrogating her. I was just trying to talk to my wife, but somehow, everything I did was wrong. If I stayed quiet, she accused me of shutting down. If I spoke up, she said I was dominating the conversation. Felt like I was walking through a field of landmines every day, constantly worried about setting something off. Our physical relationship had already been fading for a while. It used to be spontaneous, easy loving. Then it slowly started feeling scheduled, mechanical. Like she was checking off a chore she didn't really want to do. I tried bringing it up carefully. One suggested, maybe we take a weekend trip somewhere, rent a cabin, unplug, reconnect. She immediately started dissecting. The idea was I trying to isolate her from her support network, meaning Lila. Was I attempting to manufacture a sense of obligation for intimacy through a vacation? My attempt to be close to my wife got reframed as some manipulative scheme. After that, I just stopped pushing, stopped suggesting things, and then one day she told me we needed to talk, like a serious sit-down conversation that night. No distractions. Spent my whole shift at work, anxious as hell, wondering what I'd done wrong now. Did I load the dishwasher wrong? Did I forget to respond enthusiastically enough to some TikTok? She showed me that evening. She sat me down on the living room couch. She had this super serious expression, like she'd practiced the speech in the mirror. Then she pulled out her phone, and I noticed she had notes open, actual bullet points. She started explaining that she'd been reflecting a lot about our relationship. Dynamic said the sexual side of our marriage had become unhealthy because of expectation and male entitlement. I just sat there listening quietly. Interrupting would only make things worse. Then she dropped the plan from now on. Intimacy would happen on a schedule, an actual schedule. She said this system would remove pressure and unfair expectations and allow her to reclaim autonomy over her body within the marriage. Then she explained the details. Saturday nights only 10 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. 30 minutes once per week, I just stared at her brain trying to catch up with what I just heard. It sounded like satire, like a terrible joke. I asked if she was serious. She looked completely straight-faced, dead serious. She even added that this arrangement would benefit me too. Apparently it would help me appreciate her more and motivate me to perform better as a husband during the week, so I could earn that time slot. Something inside my chest went quiet. Right then. Not anger, not sadness, just hollow. The woman I married was sitting across from me describing our bedroom like it was a dentist appointment. The most personal part of our relationship reduced to a scheduled service window. And she looked proud of herself, like she'd just solved a complex social problem. I really studied her face for a moment and realized the person I married wasn't there anymore. In her place was someone repeating scripts from the internet and from a bitter friend whispering in her ear. A weird calm settled over me. I knew arguing would be pointless. You can't debate someone who thinks they're on a crusade. Any pushback would just confirm her narrative. I'd become the toxic husband trying to silence her truth. So I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked one thing. This is really what you want. This is your final decision. She nodded slowly, little flash of victory in her eyes, like she'd just won a standoff, probably expecting me to explode or plead. I took a slow breath. All right, Claire, whatever you say. Her expression shifted immediately. She was ready for a fight. Not quiet agreement. My calm answer completely derailed whatever script she had planned. She blinked like her brain needed a second to catch up, started trying to keep talking, explaining why her system was actually healthy and empowering. I lifted my hand slightly. You don't need to explain. I get it. That shut the whole speech down. Later that night, I grabbed a pillow and a blanket from the closet, walked down the hall toward the spare bedroom. She noticed, immediately asked what I was doing. I told her I wanted to respect her boundaries and give her the space. She said she needed hard to argue with that logic. It was literally her own philosophy. She just stood there in the hallway, looking puzzled. While I closed the door, didn't sleep much that night, just stared up at the dark ceiling for hours, slowly realizing something. This wasn't really a marriage anymore. It was more like I'd been trapped in something I didn't understand, and her little schedule idea wasn't a restriction. It was a signal permission to emotionally check out, not packing my bags yet, but mentally stepping away from the whole thing. She handed me that exit pass herself, and didn't even notice. Next morning I woke up feeling strangely different. All that anxiety and confusion I'd been carrying for months, just gone. In its place was this quiet focus. New objective. Get my own life straight for me. I moved through the morning, normally polite to Claire, friendly even, but distant. Like, you'd treat a quiet roommate, made my own coffee-cooked eggs for myself. Didn't ask how she slept, didn't ask about her plans for the day. If she asked about mine, I answered briefly. Short, clean sentences, nothing extra. She seemed convinced I was just sulking. I could see her texting Lila constantly, probably telling her I was being immature. Fine by me, let her believe that. First week felt weird. House was quiet in a heavy way. I started waking up early and hitting the gym before work hadn't lifted seriously. Since college married, life made me lazy. First morning, back in the weight room, felt strangely comforting. Cold steel bar in my hands, simple rules, lift weight, get stronger, no psychological debates, no hidden meanings, just effort. And results poured every ounce of frustration into those workouts, rep after rep. At the office, I changed gears too. There was this nightmare project. Nobody wanted huge system redesign that could either boost your career or bury it. Most people avoided it, like the plague. I walked straight into my manager's office, told him I wanted the assignment. He looked surprised, then impressed. Suddenly I had something real to focus on. Started staying late most nights, not because anyone forced me, because I wanted the quiet concentration office after hours was peaceful, better than the tense silence waiting at home. Also started eating, cleaner cooking. For one person is easy, steak, rice, vegetables, cut out the weeknight beers too. All the effort I used to spend trying to keep my wife happy. Now I redirected it toward improving myself. Then Saturday arrived, the first scheduled appointment. Honestly, it almost slipped my mind. Spent the day wrestling with a complicated coding issue, later went for a long run around the park. By evening, my body was exhausted, but in a satisfying way. Around 9:45, there was a knock on the guest room door. Claire, standing there wearing a satin robe trying to smile like everything was normal, said it was almost time, felt like being called into a meeting with the school principal. I just nodded and followed her down the hallway, walking into our old bedroom. Felt strange. The entire experience was bizarre. Awkward, clinical zero. Warmth, no spark, just following the procedure. She designed, honestly, it reminded me of assembling IKEA furniture. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Once the clock hit the end of the 30 minutes, I stopped, said goodnight, rolled away. No cuddling, no pillow talk, nothing. Got up, went back to the guest room, fell asleep, almost immediately. Pretty sure that's when she realized something wasn't playing out the way she expected. She thought I'd act grateful for the tiny allowance she created, maybe even beg for more. Instead, she got strict professional compliance next several weeks, settled into a rhythm alarm at 5 a.m. Gym work all day, home, late. Eat the meal, I prepped, read a few pages of a book, sleep weekends. I stayed out most of the time, reconnected with old friends I hadn't seen in years. Guys Claire never liked much, said they were too stereotypically masculine. Turns out sitting around with friends talking about trucks or football, without every word being psychoanalyzed, felt amazing. I also got back into hiking, spending entire Saturdays walking trails alone, fresh air, no noise, no arguments. Come home, tired but clear-headed. Claire started noticing changes. My face looked leaner, shirts fitting, tighter across shoulders, posture better, less stressed. She tried making small talk. Sometimes you've been at the gym a lot lately. Yep, that project at work sounds intense. It is. Conversation dead. I wasn't rude, just factual, gave her nothing emotional to latch onto later. I learned there's a term for that. Gray rock be as interesting as a plain stone. That's exactly what I became. Saturday night appointments slowly got more awkward. She started trying harder, different lingerie candles around the room, soft music playing, but decorating the environment didn't change what it was. Still felt like a scheduled procedure. I stayed polite, followed the rules, exactly, no more, no less. She was the one who turned our bedroom into a boardroom, so I treated the meeting accordingly. Eventually, she started getting irritated one night, after the scheduled time. Ended, she asked me to stay and talk. Wanted to know why I seemed so distant lately. I honestly didn't understand the question. I'm following the structure you created. You said you needed boundaries and space. I'm respecting them. She insisted that wasn't the point. Claimed I was twisting her words, being manipulative, which was wild, considering she designed the whole system. But I didn't argue, just said, sorry, you feel that way. Then walked back to the guest room. The wall between us kept growing taller, and honestly, I was the one stacking the bricks now, then about 2 months into this strange arrangement, something happened at work. The project finally cracked open. We solved a technical issue that had been choking the company for almost a year. My manager practically dragged me into his office, said corporate was thrilled, promotion coming big. Bonus too. First time in a long while I actually felt proud of something. Went home that evening, feeling steady, not ecstatic, but satisfied. Claire was in the kitchen when I walked in. She'd started trying to cook more, lately another attempt at fixing things tonight. It was some complicated vegetarian recipe from a blog Lila recommended. She asked how my day went. And for once I actually answered. Honestly told her about the breakthrough, the promotion, the bonus, not seeking praise, just stating facts while I talked. I watched her expression closely. I watched her face while I finished explaining the news. No smile, no excitement, no pride. Just this quick flicker in her eyes. Something darker, looked like resentment, maybe even a little fear. My success didn't fit into the version of reality she'd built in her story. I was supposed to be the slightly clueless husband, the guy who needed guidance, someone she could correct and manage, but the guy standing there now, independent, focused, doing well at work, didn't match that script at all. When I finished talking, she nodded slowly, then said, I should be careful not to use work as a way to avoid dealing with my emotional problems. That was her reaction. Biggest career moment I'd had in years. And somehow it turned into a psychological diagnosis. I didn't respond, just nodded once, put some of the food she made onto a plate, ate quietly at the counter, washed the dish afterward, then went back to the guest room. That night, the last tiny bit of hope finally burned out. Whatever version of Claire I used to love was gone. The question in my mind stopped being if I would leave and became how I would do it. Next day during lunch break, I started researching divorce attorneys, looked for someone, experienced someone. Practical found a guy with a strong reputation, specialized in complicated separations. Scheduled a consultation, told nobody, not Claire, not friends. This was something I was handling quietly. Life continued like normal on the surface, Jim. Work hobbies, the Saturday night appointments still happened, but now they felt almost absurd, like visiting a strange relative in a nursing home. Once a week out of obligation, Claire's behavior slowly shifted. Her desperation started becoming obvious. She'd leave the bedroom door open while changing clothes, brush past me in the hallway, accidentally bring up memories from when we first started dating, all of it. Transparent attempts to get some kind of reaction. Watching it felt almost clinical, like observing an animal trying different strategies in the wild. The difference was, the target had already mentally left the area. Then one evening the roles flipped. I remember it was a Wednesday. I was sitting in the living room reviewing paperwork. For my lawyer, had everything tucked neatly inside a plain folder. Claire came home looking stressed, clearly had a rough day. Also clearly had been talking with Lila. Again she had that determined expression, like she'd just received new instructions. She walked in wearing a dress I hadn't seen in years, recognized it instantly. She wore it during our honeymoon trip. Then she turned on old music we used to listen to, opened a bottle of wine. The whole scene looked like a carefully staged memory, trying to rebuild a past she'd personally torn apart, piece by piece. She sat down next to me on the couch, closer than usual, started talking, softly, said she missed me, said she missed us, admitted maybe the schedule idea had been too rigid. Maybe she'd been thinking too black and white. Closest thing to an apology I'd heard, but still not actually one. Her hand rested on my leg. She leaned toward me for a kiss, and I simply shifted my body. Slightly calm, movement not dramatic, just enough. So the kiss landed on empty air. I looked at her. Quietly, no anger, just finality. Claire, it's Wednesday? That's not on the schedule. Her face collapsed instantly, like someone pulled the frame out of it. Shock, embarrassment, total disbelief, all visible at once. She'd been using intimacy like leverage a tool for control, and I had just taken that tool, disabled it, and handed it back. Her brain couldn't process it in her worldview. Men were simple creatures always hungry for affection. My calm rejection broke that equation completely. She stared at me without speaking for almost a full minute. That was the moment she finally understood she hadn't just lost control of the situation. She'd lost the entire dynamic. She sat frozen on the couch, looking devastated. I'd used her own logic against her, her own rules, and it dismantled everything. She didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't argue. Not yet. She just looked shattered, like a kid realizing a magic trick was fake. All the theories she and Lila loved discussing, all the confident statements about how men think, collapsed instantly. Her whole worldview looked fragile now, like a stack of cards. And I'd quietly pulled the bottom. I stood up, calmly, said I was heading to bed, walked back to the guest room, closed the door, left her sitting in the living room, surrounded by the remains of her plan. Next few days were unbelievably quiet. She avoided me entirely. If I walked into a room, she'd leave. I heard her whispering on the phone with Lila multiple times. Urgent, frustrated conversations. I could imagine the advice she was getting. Lila didn't seem like someone who ever admitted she might be wrong, so my reaction probably got reinterpreted somehow, not a consequence of Claire's choices. No, probably labeled a more advanced form of manipulation, toxic masculinity evolving into emotional withdrawal, coercive control. Suddenly I wasn't the clueless husband anymore. I'd been promoted to villain in her story. A calculated manipulator, fine with me. Jury opinions don't matter much when you've already decided to leave the courtroom. I met with my attorney, again that week. We reviewed finances carefully. I had records for everything, salary details, the incoming bonus, shared assets, bank accounts. The house my lawyer was sharp but calm, told me my position looked solid. No kids involved, house was the main piece of property. But he warned me about something. People who lose control suddenly rarely exit. Quietly. He turned out to be exactly right about a week after the Wednesday incident. Claire switched strategies, silence ended, replaced with psychological warfare. First came guilt tactics, old photo albums left open on the coffee table, pictures from vacations, when we looked happy. She'd talk loudly on the phone, with her mother crying, about how distant I'd become. None of it affected me. Felt like watching a movie about strangers. When guilt didn't work, she tried provoking me. Little passive-aggressive remarks going to the gym again. Huh? Trying to impress someone working late must be convenient. Great way to avoid your real life. I never reacted, just shrugged and moved on. Every calm response from me made her more irritated. She needed me to act like the villain she was describing to everyone else. My refusal to play the role was driving her insane. I could feel the final confrontation, building like pressure before a thunderstorm, heavy air, dark sky. You know it's coming, you just don't know the exact moment it'll break it. Finally happened on a Sunday afternoon. I was in the guest room organizing paperwork, putting everything important into a briefcase, documents I'd need. Soon she knocked once, then walked in without waiting. This was it. Her face looked swollen from crying, but her eyes were cold and focused. She came prepared last attempt. She started by saying she couldn't keep living like this, that the situation was unbearable, then launched into a long speech, a non-stop stream of therapy language, every buzzword she'd learned over the past year, talking about my emotional unavailability, my refusal to engage my passive, aggressive behavior. She said I'd turned our house into a hostile environment. I just leaned against the dresser and listened quietly. According to her speech, everything wrong was my fault. My distance was the issue. My cold behavior was the issue. Even me improving my own life was apparently the issue. Funny thing though, not once did she mention the schedule. Not once did she mention the months she treated me like an inconvenience. Nothing about turning our relationship into some weird power contest. In her version of events, she was the innocent victim, and I was the cruel husband who suddenly changed. For no reason, she paced across the room, building up steam, so I could see the big finale coming clearly rehearsed. Lila must have spent hours coaching her on this speech. Then she dropped the line, "I've been talking with Lila a lot lately," like that was supposed to give her argument divine authority. She said Lila helped her understand everything, clearly helped her find her strength. Great, here it comes. So this is your last chance. Ethan voice shaking with dramatic intensity. Either you start acting like the husband I married again, or I'm done. She stopped directly in front of me, looked me straight in the eyes, trying to project power. You need to choose right now. Fix this marriage or I'm filing for divorce. She said it like it was the ultimate weapon, like it would instantly make me panic in her mind. No man could hear that threat and stay calm. Fear of public failure, financial damage, being the guy whose wife left him. She stood there breathing hard, waiting for me to crumble, waiting for apologies, tears begging. The room went quiet. 1 second, 2 seconds, 5. Her confident expression started slipping. Little bit of confusion creeping into her eyes. This wasn't the reaction she expected. I didn't say anything, yet just held eye contact, let the silence hang in the air. Let her feel the weight of the ultimatum she'd just thrown at me. Let her notice it had zero effect. After a long moment, I pushed myself off the dresser, gave a slow nod. "You know what, Claire, you're right. It is time to choose." She blinked. "You agree?" "Yeah, I agree we should get a divorce then." I turned toward the bed, picked up the briefcase sitting there, opened it calmly. Inside was a thick, organized folder. I pulled it out and held it up. "The thing is, you're a little late to the party." I stepped forward and placed the folder in her hands. She looked down at it, confused on the cover, in plain black text petition for dissolution of marriage. Her name and mine printed underneath. She looked back up at me, then back at the folder, like her brain refused to accept what it was seeing. "I hired an attorney about 5 weeks ago. Those are my copies. The official documents were filed with the court on Friday. You'll probably get served sometime this week." The color drained from her face immediately, not exaggerating. It was like someone flipped a switch, 1 second red with anger. 3 seconds later, pale gray, her hands started shaking. The folder slipped out of her fingers, landed on the floor with a dull thud. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out, just a tiny choking sound. The confident woman who just issued an ultimatum vanished instantly. In her place was someone completely lost, someone realizing actions have consequences. Finally, she managed to speak barely above a whisper. But how? Why? I decided she deserved the truth, not out of cruelty just. Honesty, you did this. Claire, all of it. You took something that was supposed to be a partnership and turned it into a competition for control. You read a rule book written by bitter people online, then followed it like gospel. You decided affection and intimacy were tools, things to ration, things to schedule, like booking a dentist appointment. I stepped a little closer. Well, congratulations. You turned the marriage into a business transaction, and I decided it's a bad investment. So I'm liquidating my position. Tears started forming in her eyes, not sad tears, pure shock. But I thought, I just wanted you to appreciate me more. You don't make someone appreciate you by treating them like a problem. I said quietly, you didn't want a partner. You wanted someone to manage someone beneath you. You weren't after connection. You wanted control. And that schedule you created, I let out a small dry laugh. That was the biggest mistake you ever made. You thought it was a leash, but it was actually the key. You unlocked the cage and didn't even notice the second you put a timer on affection. You killed it. You turned it into a chore. And honestly, I don't feel like doing that chore anymore. That's when she finally collapsed, dropped to the floor, sobbing, real crying this time, messy raw. The kind that comes from deep shock. Someone realizing they destroyed something important themselves. For a brief moment, I felt a little pity, just a tiny flicker, but it faded quickly, replaced by memories of the past year, the lectures, the smug expressions, the satisfaction when she announced her new rules. I looked at the briefcase on the bed. Everything I needed was inside, important documents, already moved out earlier, bank accounts separated short-term, apartment arranged, ready to move. That same day I had a plan. She had theories, plans, beat theories. Every time I picked up the briefcase, my lawyer's contact info is inside that folder. He'll talk with yours soon. I walked toward the door, stopped once and looked back. Good luck. Claire and I meant it. She was going to need it. Then I stepped out, closed the door quietly behind me, walked through the house that didn't feel like mine anymore, got into my car, drove away, didn't look back. About 5 minutes down the road, I had to pull over. A wave hit me, not anger, not sadness, relief, deep, overwhelming relief. Felt like I'd been holding my breath for an entire year. And finally exhaled the tension, the anxiety, walking on eggshells every day, all gone. I sat there breathing the quiet air for the first time in a long time. I felt free. The divorce itself ended up surprisingly simple once she realized how prepared I was. The fight drained out of her. I'm sure Lila told her to go. Scorched earth, try to take everything. But my lawyer knew exactly what he was doing. I offered a fair settlement anyway. I just wanted the whole thing finished. We sold the house, split the equity down the middle. I kept my savings, my bonus, my career, my future. She walked away with half of a life. She'd burned herself. A few months later, I heard through a mutual friend Claire and Lila had a huge falling out. Apparently, when Claire's life collapsed, Lila kept doubling down on her advice, pushing even more extreme ideas. And eventually Claire realized her friend cared more about being right than being helpful. After that, I lost track of her completely, and honestly, I didn't try to find out. I focused on my own life, took the promotion, kept training at the gym, did some traveling, learned how peaceful life can be when there's no constant tension. I realized something important. You can't build a future with someone who treats you like the enemy. A relationship isn't supposed to feel like a battlefield. A marriage isn't a chess match, and if someone tries to turn it into one, the only winning move is not to play.